The issue of abortion and contraception continue to divide the country, and questions we received from voters reflected that divide. For example, one voter wanted to know your position on a woman's right to abortion, but not only that, but to contraception and other reproductive health services, and whether government should provide those services. Another asked if you believe that life begins at conception, and in that person's view, what would you do to protect the babies who could be aborted during your term in the Senate? So where do you stand on these issues? Mr. Horning.
Oh boy, you can imagine this is going to be a tough one. And all of us up here have said we're pro-life. But what does that really mean in terms of a federal legislature? You know, there's not really any authority granted to the federal government in matters of even murder. You know, that is a state-level crime, and unless it crosses state boundaries, it's really not supposed to be a federal matter. In fact, I've said, you know, just on constitutional grounds, I would have to oppose Roe v. Wade being treated as law. It's not. It was an unconstitutional ruling, and the laws that have been written subsequent to it and under the color of it have been wrong. But, you know, we have been doing so badly for so long that we've kind of forgotten how many other rights are being trampled on with this. Men don't have any concomitant rights over their own baby. You know, we expect that, you know, you can't just say no to child support, for instance. We've gotten so lopsided with looking at this as only a woman's issue, we forget that there are all kinds of ways around this where we can make it easier for people to adopt children. There are lots of things we can do better than what we're doing right now. But as a federal legislator, I got to tell you, there isn't that much that I could do.
Thank you. Mr. Donnelly.
I believe in pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception. The only exceptions I believe in are for rape and incest and life of the mother. In regards to contraception, I believe women have a right to access quality health care. At the same time, I believe that religious institutions have a right to not go against their own religious beliefs. We can't ask them to do something they simply cannot do. And so how do we make sure that a woman has the right to that quality health care while at the same time protecting the rights of the religious institutions to not violate their own beliefs? And that's what we're working on right now. Many groups, many of them in the Catholic Church, which I'm a member of, have filed suit. They have every right to file that suit. I am working on a legislative solution to it. There is also work being done on the judicial side, and we are trying to get an executive solution to this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch.
You know, this is that issue that every candidate for federal or even state office faces, and I too certainly stand for life. I know there are some who disagree, and I respect their point of view, but I believe that life begins at conception. The only exception I have to have an abortion is in that case of the life of the mother. I struggled with it myself for a long time, but I came to realize life is that gift from God, and I think even when life begins in that horrible situation of rape, that it is something that God intended to happen. You know, Mr. Donnelly's comments about Obamacare and what's happening there, trying to reform it, that's good to reform it, but it should not be here in the first place. You know, the fact that we have the Catholic Church and so many institutions having to file a lawsuit to get their basic freedom that I thought was guaranteed under the Constitution, the practice of your religion, that now there has to be an amendment put forward to somehow bring that about. If the law had never been passed, that lawsuit wouldn't be in place, and religious freedom would not today be in question.
All right, let's continue with rebuttals. Mr. Horning, 30 seconds.
Well, it's my experience where you have people drawing up sides, pro and con, so vehemently, there's usually a lot of misunderstanding, and there's no real winning this issue. Unfortunately, it's one of those that, you know, it's an outcome of something terrible happening sometimes. And it's, you know, dealing with mistakes, it's dealing with rape, it's dealing with life situations that nobody wants. In a minute, we really can't do very much justice to this, but I also got to tell you, as a federal legislator, you know, I would not be able to do justice to this. I'm just telling you right now, I would fail in what I would try to achieve.
All right, thank you. Mr. Donnelly?
My Catholic faith has guided me on this issue, and I know their faiths have guided my friends who are up here as well. I just want to mention one thing real quick. We have a neat program back in my hometown. It's called the Women's Care Center. And what they do is to provide a positive alternative. For women who are pregnant, they have an opportunity for a place to live, a place to be cared for, somebody to know that you have people who care about you and love you and want to help you in any way during your pregnancy.
Thank you. Mr. Murdoch, 30 seconds.
Well, very short, less than 30 seconds. Obamacare has caused this issue of religious freedom, ordering the Catholic Church, ordering institutions that find it morally objectionable to provide contraception care, to even provide abortifacients. That goes against their basic faith, and it's wrong. Mr. Donnelly, unfortunately, and I respect him and his point of view on this issue, but it was Obamacare for which he cast the deciding vote that caused this argument to surface in the first place.
Thank you. Move to our next question.